Hello, and welcome to our latest HR on the Offensive live stream. It's me, Chris Howard from Lace Partners, joining you as always, as we love to do on these Tuesday live streams. Now, today is a campaign-inspired live stream. We've got our latest campaign, which is out at the moment, which is called Becoming Skills Powered. It is a campaign that we're breaking down into a whole range of different chapters, and we are going to be talking about skills-based organizations specifically. Easy for me to say. So how do you set them up? What are they? How do you develop a skills-based approach? What are some of the challenges that you face? We're going to be looking to answer all of those questions over the next few months, including video content, as we're doing now, blogs, we've got podcasts, we'll probably put together some webinars and some events as well. To kick off our campaign, which we did last week or the week before, we had a skills survey. So if you want to find out more about that, you can go onto the Lace Partners website, click on the insights section and search for our campaign navigation, and you can find the Becoming Skills campaign and fill in the survey as well. It'd be really, really helpful to us. For today's very short live stream, we're going to do 5-10 minutes. I have got the fabulous Jeff Schwartz, who is from the He is the Gloat VP of Insights and Impact. How you doing, Jeff? You all right?
I'm doing very well. It's a beautiful morning here in New York. Finally cooling down a little bit. Yeah. Lovely.
And actually, funnily enough, at the time of us recording, obviously there's people that watch this afterwards, it's a beautiful afternoon in London. So, we've all got the benefit of the weather, but we are not here to talk about the weather. We are here to talk about skills-based organizations. And Jeff, you and I had a catch up with some of the Gloat team and some of the Lace team probably a couple of weeks ago. Mm-hmm. And you almost posed 3 questions when we're talking about skills-based organizations that I absolutely loved. And I said, you're coming on, I'm dragging you onto the live stream with me. And so here we are. So we're going to try and answer those 3 questions. And they were the what, the why, and the how. And we'll get through those in a second. Do you want to just do a minute about yourself and your background, though?
Absolutely. First of all, delighted to be here on behalf of Gloat and with Lace Partners. I'm the VP of Insights and Impact at Gloat. That I primarily work on research, and I spend almost all of my time with customers and prospects. And industry analysts, so it's quite fun. I'm also a professor at Columbia Business School, where I teach MBA and executive education classes on the future of work, and I've written some books as well. So a topic that I follow very closely, and just really excited to be here with you this afternoon and this morning.
Yeah, so let's do a little. So these live streams, as people who have watched them before will know, they normally last 5, 10, maximum 15 minutes. So we're going to do a bit of a quick fire one, and we might delve into some of the detail of it on another podcast later on, where we'll get our friends from Gloat along to have a chat with us about how they see the world, all things skills-based organization, and how to become skills powered. But we're going to kick off with a nice easy one for you, and that's the what that you posed. And let's lay that out for our watchers of this video or listeners. Like, what are we talking about when we talk about a skills-based organization approach?
So I think these 3 questions, what, why, and how, are absolutely central. And I will do my best to be brief. People that know me, who either through my work at Gloat or teaching at Columbia, I'm not known for my brevity, but I will try to give rapid fire answers. What is a skills-based organization or skills-based organization approach? It's fundamentally a reframing, right? When I think of the what, this is a from to question, right? Previously, we were, and we still are in most cases, job-based organizations. Everything we do in HR and in business planning is based on a job, largely a full-time equivalent. And a job, it's a standard packet with standard tasks. It's relatively predictable and stable. We build all sorts of onboarding and linear development features based on it. And what we have seen in the last few years, and there's this wonderful quote from, really comes from Ernest Hemingway, who has a character who talks about, who's asked the question, how did he become bankrupt? And he says, well, I became bankrupt slowly and then all of a sudden. And I think what is a skills-based organization is like that. It's been percolating for a while, but now it's suddenly burst onto the scene. And we're moving from a job-based view of the world to both a skills and a work-based view of the world. And both skills and work are dynamic. Now, sometimes we use the expression that skills is the currency, right? Which is another way of saying skills is the unit that we're doing. And I'll talk in a second about why we need to move from a job-based structure to a skills-based structure, from a static structure to a dynamic structure. But in one line, a skills-based organization is an organization that moves from a view of static linear jobs and careers to one that looks at dynamic skills and dynamic work as the nature of both careers and the nature of the way that work is organized and managed and people are deployed and flowed into that work.
Yeah, it's a really, really fascinating one, this is. And we've certainly seen at Lace Partners the momentum gathering, particularly probably in the last 6 to 9 months, maybe even 12 months. Like, people have talked about skills-based organizations, but we're starting to see more and more of it in the press. And over here in the UK, what we've seen a lot of as well, you've got governments that are talking about that kind of agenda. We're going to be emphasizing skills within business and driving skills both from young workforce, younger sort of people entering the workforce, but actually people that are more mature or perhaps further along in their sort of employee life cycle, if you like. So let's delve into that bit. And you sort of touched on it there, which is the why. Like, why are governments talking about it? Why are businesses talking about it? Why are we talking about it? And why is this such a hot topic?
Right. So the why is in many ways, I think, absolutely central to this question. At Gloat, one of the ways we describe what we do is we talk about putting people and organizations in motion, thinking about dynamic organizations, dynamic careers. It's a hot topic because the notion of linear jobs and linear careers and static work is outdated, right? And several things have happened, again, slowly and then all of a sudden, right? I mean, COVID brought them together, the digital revolution, the AI revolution, right? And what we're seeing is that the half-life of skills is getting shorter and shorter, right? How long a specific skill is relevant before you need to learn the next computer language, the next way of doing marketing, is one part of it. The other is employee expectations are changing, right? Employees are looking for dynamic careers and dynamic lives. They're looking for flexibility. They're looking for ways to actually grow in their work. And a third piece is that work itself has changed. So not only have employee expectations changed, and we need new skills because of rapidly changing technology, and a whole bunch of technologies. Again, digital and AI are two good examples. But work itself is changing. And I would summarize this by referring to an article that was just released recently by McKinsey. And they talked about how a technology revolution requires an organization revolution. But let me be very succinct, right? Traditionally, work was organized in process-based jobs. And about 80% of what we did was in standardized process-based jobs. And we spent much of the last 30 years sort of putting that on enterprise software and standardizing processes. And 20% were special projects. We're in a world now where work is being projectized. An increasing percentage of work is not just process and tasks. We may go into a world, and this is what McKinsey points out, where we flip the equation, where we have 80% of the work is projects and 20% is standard jobs and tasks and processes. And so why we're talking about it is that careers are changing, expectations are changing, and the way that we're doing work is changing. And we saw that COVID really punctuated that. Yeah. Many organizations found that they simply needed to be doing many new things all at once, right? And the way I heard a number of executives describe it is, during COVID, we found that half of our employees were overworked and half were overworked and half were underworked. The work itself was shifting very rapidly. And a skills-based approach allows you to develop and redeploy much more quickly than a traditional bureaucratic, job-based hierarchical approach. So those are some of the elements of the why.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really interesting point, actually. This idea of the overworked and the underworked. It's organizations are now looking at, well, let's start to think about productivity. That's something that, particularly in the last few years, it's like, how do we be the most productive? And having a whole bunch of people that are underworked or a whole bunch overworked, that's not good for our business model. It's not good for our approach. And so we need a slightly different way of thinking. So we've gone through what a skills-based organization is. You've talked a little bit about why this is a big topic. And of course, we've got a couple of minutes left. I just want you to reflect a little bit, because I'm sure there's people watching this that maybe they've talked about it internally. Maybe they've been thinking about, where do we get started, or what's the next step for us? So I guess that sort of final question that's worth us touching on and just getting a little bit of nuggets of advice from you really is, like, if I'm a CPO, if I'm a HR director, if I'm running a business and we're thinking about migrating into this kind of thinking, how do I actually get started?
Well, how you get started is it's obviously an interesting and important question. And to say something, I'm not trying to be controversial, I'm simply trying to be direct. And I think that many of our colleagues, Josh Burson and Kathy Enderis, are very good examples, say something that I think is absolutely central to this, which is start thinking about a skills-based organization and skills-based strategies through the lens of the most important business problems your company is trying to solve, right? Are you focusing on productivity? Are you focusing on rapidly adapting to a changing world? Are you focusing on managing workforce risks? These are the big three sort of business challenges that we think about at Gloat. And I think the route that a number of people are taking today, which I think you can tell, Chris, that I like quotes, which is, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. Interesting quote. So I think it's absolutely relevant to start the skills-based organization. Again, Ravin and Tanuj, in their book on the skills-based organization, talk about having a North Star. The North Star being a business problem or a constellation of business problems. And let me just give 2 or 3 very quick examples of them. One would be a senior executive, not just a CHRO, but a CEO or a business unit leader saying, we are having too high voluntary attrition of high performers. People find it easier to find really good jobs outside our company versus inside our company, right? And we need people to be able to move inside our organization so that we can capture their skills and aspirations and put them to work, right? Moving your numbers on voluntary turnover and being able to redeploy people is a good reason to start thinking about a skills-based strategy, right? And these skills-based strategies are often very often powered by talent marketplaces and career marketplaces and internal gig markets. Another is trying to develop the skills that you need for the future, right? A skills-based strategy in service of identifying and developing the skills that you need is a very powerful question that you can look at and monitor, right? How do you, again, I mentioned workforce risk. A number of boards and senior executive teams are asking, do we have the talent that we need? Do we have the skills we need to go forward? What I'm trying to highlight here is the value of starting with a business result and a business outcome and not starting with process, right? When you start with process, when you say, we're going to create a new ontology, we're going to create a new sort of skills language in the organization. I think the road that is leading people away from impact is when we think of the skills-powered organization largely in the context of how it helps us in HR doing what we're doing today, versus how can we in HR use skills as the new unit for work and aspiration. How can we create internal project and job markets using skills? And how can we actually solve problems with skills? And I think companies that start with that business problem and then think about what they can do to put skills in motion through talent markets, through skills planning, through skills visibility tools, are seeing much more quickly the kind of outcomes and impact that they're looking for. So that's a little bit about this how question. And sometimes the how question is, start with a catalog and then harmonize all your data and then, create a new job family structure. All these things are important, but when we do them in service of a business problem, it goes not only more quickly, but it actually gets to the impact that we're looking at. So that's just a little bit about this very large question of how to get started.
Yeah, and there'll be a variety of different things that we'll be talking about. Jeff just mentioned there about talent marketplaces. We'll be talking about how do you tap into different pools of talent. So we've had a few conversations internally about different types of areas where potentially untapped talent exists, economically active individuals. There's talk about in the UK around prison workers that potentially are being rehabilitated. So there's a whole marketplace. There's internal coding of the skills that you've got, understanding, well, actually, we've got a bucket of skills, we've got a bucket of capability within our organization that we're not tapping in as well. That's the end of this very, very quick synopsis. And as Jeff said, on a very, very large topic, we're going to go into a lot of detail over the next few months. Please feel free to reach out to either myself, to Jeff, our friends at Gloat, or any of the team at Lace Partners if you'd like to have a little bit more information. I've just popped on the bottom of our live stream as we wrap up today the short link where you can go to access the actual campaign itself. But Jeff, thank you very much for answering those 3 questions in a very succinct time indeed.
Thank you, Chris. And people can reach us at gloat.com, and a lot of what we've talked about is there as well. And we're launching a series of webinars on some of these skills-based questions as well. So we look forward to staying connected and being part of the ongoing conversation. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. And thank you guys for listening. And we'll catch you next time on the HR on the Offensive live stream. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.